My name is Claire Donovan, and if you had seen me that night, you'd have thought I had everything under control. Truth was, I was barely holding it together. The rain was coming down in sheets, splattering against the hood of my old pickup as I hauled the last crate of parts into the back. My coveralls were soaked through my hands raw from the cold, but I didn't care. When you've been abandoned once, you learn to work through anything because stopping means thinking, and thinking is dangerous. It had been exactly 3 months since Luke walked out without warning. No note, no call, just a slammed door and a hole in my life where I thought a future would be. 3 months since I'd learned I was pregnant and decided against every trembling fear in my chest that I was keeping this baby. And 3 months since I'd been doing every odd job I could to pay for rent groceries, and the crib sitting half-assembled in the corner of my tiny apartment. I thought the worst was behind me. I thought the betrayal, the tears on the bathroom floor, the panic in the middle of the night, they'd burned out. But life has a way of saving its biggest punches for when you think you can finally catch your breath. That night the garage was quiet, except for the hum of a space heater and the occasional ping of cooling metal. I leaned on the workbench, sipping coffee gone cold, and let my mind drift. That's when the storm outside caught my attention. Not the rain, but the silence between the thunderclaps. That hollow ringing kind of quiet that tells you something's about to happen. I shook it off, told myself it was just another night, another shift. But deep down my gut knew better. I've learned to listen to that voice even when it scares me. Especially when it scares me. Sliding into the driver's seat of my truck, I wiped the condensation from the windshield and started the engine. The wipers beat a steady rhythm as I pulled onto the 2-lane highway leading out of town. Headlights cut narrow tunnels through the downpour, and my thoughts wandered to the small life growing inside me. "It's just you and me now, kid," I whispered, resting a hand on my belly, "and we're going to make it, no matter what." If you've ever been in that place where everything feels like it's slipping, but you're clinging anyway, you'll understand why I kept driving, even when every sensible bone in my body told me to turn back. Because sometimes you can feel your life about to change, and you don't get to pick whether it's for better or worse. That's when I saw it. At first, it looked like a deer stumbling out of the tree line right into the beam of my headlights. But as I drew closer, the shape became human, a man staggering, clutching at something invisible, his clothes torn and streaked with mud. He collapsed to his knees on the shoulder, one arm reaching out like he could grab hold of the storm itself. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might drown out the sound of the rain. I knew every story about people who stopped for strangers at night. None of them ended well. But there was something in the way he moved, or maybe in the way he fell, that tore straight through my fear. I slowed, pulled over, and rolled down the passenger window. "Hey, you okay?" He lifted his head, and for a second our eyes met. Mud-caked blood on his temple lips cracked. "Please, help me," he rasped before collapsing face first into the wet gravel. I don't remember making the decision. 1 second I was in the cab, the next I was kneeling in the rain, hauling his arm over my shoulder. He was heavy, the weight of him pressing into the small of my back, my belly straining with the effort. Every step to the truck felt like pushing through water. Once he was in the passenger seat, slumped against the door, I slammed the truck into gear and headed for the nearest hospital. My mind raced. Who was he? What had happened? And why did it feel like picking him up was about to pull me into something I couldn't walk away from? If you're still with me right now, tell me in the comments, have you ever been in that moment where you knew you were crossing a line into something bigger than yourself? Because that night I had no idea that stopping for him wasn't just about saving a stranger. It was about changing the entire course of my life. And it had only just begun. The storm hadn't let up by the time I pulled into St. Luke's Medical Center. I skidded into the ER drop-off lane, through the truck and park, and bolted around to the passenger side. The man was still slumped in the seat, breathing shallow, his head lolling forward. I yanked the door open and shouted for help. 2 nurses in scrubs sprinted out with a gurney, their sneakers squeaking on the wet pavement. "What happened?" one of them called. "I found him on the side of County Road 17, I said, breathless. "He was barely standing, then he collapsed. He needs help now." They eased him onto the gurney, an oxygen mask already pressed to his face. One nurse disappeared inside with him, the other stayed behind to get my name and a quick statement. By the time they wheeled him through the double doors, I was soaked to the skin, my boots squishing with every step. Inside the waiting room, fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and the smell of antiseptic clung to everything. My pulse still raced from the adrenaline, but now a strange quiet was creeping in, the kind that comes after you've done something irreversible. I sat in a molded plastic chair, trying not to shiver. My hoodie clung to me, heavy with rain, and I wrapped my arms around myself more for comfort than warmth. My mind kept circling back to those 3 words he'd managed to get out before passing out. Please help me. It was another 30 minutes before a nurse came out to speak to me. She had kind eyes, but her voice was brisk, practiced. He's stable for now. No ID on him, no phone, nothing. Do you know his name? I hesitated. He said, Liam, that's all I got. She jotted it down. We'll run him through the system, see if we can find next of kin. You're free to go, Ms. Claire Donovan. She nodded, already moving toward the nurse's station. We'll be in touch if we need anything further. Free to go. Like this was just another errand I'd checked off my list. But walking out into that rain again, I felt an odd pull. Like I'd left something behind in that sterile, humming ER. By the time I made it back to my truck, the sky was still a churn of gray and silver rain hammering on the roof. I started the engine, the heater blasting, and told myself I'd done my part. I'd gotten him here alive. That was enough. Except it didn't feel like enough. The drive back to my apartment was a blur of windshield wipers and streetlights bleeding in the rain. My mind kept conjuring his face, pale, dirt-streaked eyes, desperate. Whoever he was, whatever had happened out there, it wasn't random. I could feel it in my bones. I pulled into my apartment complex, climbed the stairs, and unlocked the door to my second-floor unit. The moment I stepped inside, the scent of motor oil and coffee grounded me back in my own life. I peeled off my wet clothes, tossed them in the hamper, and stood in the small bathroom staring at my reflection. Tired eyes, damp hair plastered to my face, a faint swell under my t-shirt where my baby was growing steady and silent. I pressed a hand to my belly. We're okay, I murmured. We did a good thing tonight. But the truth was, I had no idea if that was true. Before I go further, I want to ask you something. If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Would you have pulled over in the dark, in the middle of a storm, for a stranger who looked like he'd crawled out of a war zone? Let me know down below. Because at that moment, I didn't know if I'd saved someone's life, or opened a door I'd never be able to close. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the building, every rumble of thunder had me glancing toward the window. I couldn't stop thinking about him, wondering if he'd wake up, if he'd even remember me. By morning, the rain had stopped, but the heaviness in the air hadn't lifted. And when the knock came at my door, sharp and deliberate, I knew instinctively it wasn't a neighbor and it wasn't good news. I froze halfway between the kitchen and the front door. 3 quick raps again, steady, confident, not the kind of knock from someone selling magazine subscriptions. My heart picked up speed, thudding in my ears. I moved quietly to the peephole. 2 men in dark suits stood side by side, hands clasped in front of them like statues. Behind them on the landing was a third man, older, tanned, with silver hair swept back and a charcoal overcoat that looked like it cost more than my truck. He didn't fidget. He didn't look around. He just stared straight at my door, a faint smile tugging at his mouth like he already knew I was on the other side. Something in my gut twisted. I cracked the door just enough to keep the chain on. Can I help you? The older man stepped forward, his voice smooth and deliberate. Claire Donovan. I hesitated. Yes. You saved my son last night, Liam Carter. His smile didn't reach his eyes. I'm very grateful. Liam Carter. The name fit, but the warmth I expected in a father's voice wasn't there. Instead, his tone was rehearsed, like he'd said these exact words to 100 strangers before. Before I could respond, he reached inside his coat and pulled out a thick envelope. Without asking, he slid it through the gap in the door until it rested on my counter. A small token of appreciation, he said. I didn't touch it. How is he? Recovering? Nothing for you to worry about. His gaze flicked over me, taking in the worn hoodie, the bare apartment beyond. Then he added almost casually, You didn't hear anything unusual from him, did you? Sometimes trauma makes people say strange things. There it was, that subtle shift in the air like a blade pressing against the skin without breaking it. I kept my voice flat. He barely spoke. Good, he said with that too perfect smile. Then let's keep it that way. The words landed heavier than the envelope between us. He gave a polite nod and turned the 2 bodyguards falling in step behind him. Their footsteps echoed down the stairwell until the building was silent again. I shut the door, slid the chain off, and locked it tight. Then I just stood there staring at the envelope. My better judgment told me to toss it in a drawer and forget it. But curiosity won. Inside was more cash than I'd ever seen in one place in my life. Crisp hundreds stacked neatly. It didn't feel like gratitude, it felt like a muzzle. I sat down at the table, the bills spread out in front of me, my mind running in circles. Why would a father show no real concern for a son he claimed had been half dead the night before? Why did it matter so much what Liam might have said? By the time the coffee pot hissed empty, I knew sitting here wasn't going to give me answers. I grabbed my keys and headed for St. Luke's. The nurse at the front desk frowned when I asked to see Liam. He's not taking visitors. Can you just tell him Claire's here? He'll know who I am. She hesitated, then her expression softened with something like pity. I'm sorry, but he's in a medically induced coma now. My stomach dropped. What he was talking last night. Orders from above, she said, glancing toward the restricted wing. His father is with him. I walked away in a daze, every instinct in me screaming that this was wrong. I was halfway to the exit when a soft voice called from behind me. Wait, you're the driver, right? I turned. A young nurse with auburn hair and a badge that read Grace Moore stepped forward, glancing around nervously. Yeah, I said slowly. Why? Not here, follow me. She led me into a small supply room and shut the door. Her voice dropped to a whisper. He's not in a coma, they're sedating him. Heavy drugs, constant drip. Someone doesn't want him awake. My pulse kicked up. Why? Grace shook her head. That man who claims to be his father, he paid off our chief of medicine. I overheard him say, keep him under until I say otherwise. That's not medical care. That's something else. I stepped back, the walls of the tiny room suddenly too close. I'm pregnant, I blurted the words, surprising even me. I can't get mixed up in something dangerous. I get it, she said quietly. But if we don't do something soon, Liam may never wake up. And whatever he knows, someone's willing to pay to keep it buried. I left the hospital with her warning buzzing in my head, louder than the traffic outside. I told myself I'd walk away, that I'd done enough. But deep down, I already knew that wasn't true. 2 days later, I'd be back. And I wouldn't be alone. 2 days can feel like a lifetime when your mind is at war with itself. Every hour I tried to convince myself to let it go. Every time I pressed my hand to my belly, I reminded myself there was more than just me to think about now. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw Liam's face in that truck, pale and bloodied, whispering for help. By the second night, sleep was impossible. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the unopened envelope of cash like it was a live grenade. My coffee had gone cold hours ago. When the clock struck midnight, I realized my decision had already been made. The next morning, I was parked 2 blocks from St. Luke's in my truck, the same truck I'd picked him up in. Grace had agreed to help. She'd made me swear I understood the risks. If they catch me, I lose my job. If they catch you, Claire? She'd let the sentence hang in the air. We both knew there was no telling what a man like Gregory Carter would do. When she finally appeared at the side entrance, her white nurse's cap tucked over her hair and a surgical mask hanging from her neck, my heart slammed against my ribs. She slid into the passenger seat with a paper bag in her lap. Antibiotics, pain meds, electrolyte packs. Instructions are inside. If we're doing this, it has to be tonight. Night shift is quieter, fewer eyes. I nodded, gripping the wheel. Let's go before I lose my nerve. Inside the hospital, the air was cool and sterile, the smell of antiseptic hitting my nose instantly. My borrowed scrubs were loose enough to hide my growing belly, but every step felt like I was walking under a spotlight. Grace led the way down a side corridor, her badge granting us access through a set of locked doors. We reached Liam's room without seeing another soul. He was lying there, pale as paper, an IV line snaking from his arm to a bag of clear liquid. His chest rose and fell with slow, unnatural rhythm. Grace moved to the drip and turned the valve off. It'll take a few minutes for the sedative to wear off, but we have to move him now, she whispered. Together we eased him onto a gurney. Even with both of us, the weight was punishing. The squeak of the wheels down the hallway seemed deafening in the stillness. My hoodie stretched across my stomach, each bump in the tile floor sending a jolt through me. Every corner we turned, I expected someone to shout to grab my arm. But we reached the rear exit without incident. Outside, the night air was heavy and damp. We lifted Liam into the passenger seat of my truck. No way he could stretch out in the back with my tools piled there. Grace shoved the paper bag into my hands. Keep him alive, okay? She said, her eyes searching mine. I will. And then she was gone, disappearing back into the shadows of the hospital. The drive back to my apartment felt like it took hours. Twice Liam stirred his head, lolling toward me. The second time he tried to speak, but all that came out was a hoarse murmur. When I finally pulled into my parking lot, I cut the engine and just sat there for a second, my hands gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles ached. Then I got out, half-dragged, half-guided him up the stairs to my apartment. Once inside, I eased him down onto the couch. His eyes fluttered open for the first time, scanning the room in confusion. "Where am I?" "Safe," I said. "You're safe now." He tried to sit up, wincing as he clutched his ribs. "You saved me twice." I sank into the armchair across from him. "Then maybe you can tell me why someone's paying doctors to keep you asleep." His jaw tightened, a flicker of something, anger, maybe fear, crossing his face. "Gregory Carter. He's not my father legally, but by blood." "No. He married my mom after my real dad died. She trusted him. He took everything when she passed. My real father left me a controlling interest in his hotel chain, but I don't get access until my 25th birthday. That's next week." I felt the pieces locking together, and he wants it. He wants it all. He tried to get me to sign it over. When I refused, they took me. I think they were planning to keep me under until it was too late. For a long moment, the only sound was the hum of my heater. I looked at him, this man I barely knew, and thought about the times I'd been cornered, dismissed, made to feel like I didn't matter. "You're not going back there," I said finally. "Not while I'm breathing." He blinked at me, startled. Then a faint smile. "You don't even know me." "I know enough." And for the first time since Luke left, I felt like maybe I wasn't alone in this fight anymore. The next morning, sunlight spilled across my living room, catching the dust motes in the air. For a brief, sleepy second, it almost felt normal until I heard the rustle of movement on the couch. Liam was awake, propped up on one elbow, his face pale but sharper than it had been last night. He watched me cross the room with the wariness of someone used to reading every expression, every tone. "You stayed," he said quietly. "Wasn't going to leave you drooling on my couch," I replied, trying for lightness, though my chest felt tight. "You hungry?" He hesitated, then nodded. While I scrambled some eggs in my small kitchen, he told me more about his stepfather's empire, how Gregory Carter had clawed his way up from nothing, how he valued control over anything else. If I sign the papers, he gets everything. If I don't, he'll make sure I never get the chance to inherit. I slid a plate in front of him. "And the police? They've never been an option. Gregory's got half the city in his pocket." I leaned back against the counter, arms crossed. "Then we'll have to be smarter." The words surprised even me. I'd spent the past few months keeping my head down, just trying to survive. Now I was talking about strategy like I was in some spy movie. But something about the way Gregory had looked at me, that cold, deliberate dismissal, had lit a fuse I didn't know I still had. "Claire." Liam began, his tone careful. "You don't owe me this. I can't promise it won't get dangerous." "I know," I said, "but I also know what it's like to have someone try to erase you. And I'm not letting that happen to you." We spent the rest of the morning making lists, names of people Liam thought might still be loyal to him, documents he suspected Gregory had forged. My cramped coffee table became a war room scattered with notebook pages and coffee cups. By noon, my phone buzzed with a text from "Ben, you okay? Haven't seen you in a couple days." I stared at the screen for a long moment. I'd told no one about Liam, not even Ben and his wife Carla, the only people who'd stood by me after Luke left. I debated telling them, but the fewer people who knew, the better. Instead, I texted back a simple, "Yeah, just busy." It felt like a lie, and it was, but this was bigger than me now. As the day wore on, Liam's color improved. He even managed a wry smile when I caught him inspecting the half-assembled crib in the corner. "Guess we both have deadlines coming up," he said. That night, after I made sure he had enough blankets, I found myself standing by the window looking down at the street. Every passing car set my nerves on edge. I didn't know if Gregory's people were watching yet, but it was only a matter of time. Before I go further, I want to know, if you were in my position, would you tell your friends what's going on, or keep it to yourself? Drop it in the comments. I'm still not sure I made the right call. Sleep didn't come easy. Around 2 a.m., a car slowed outside my building, its headlights sweeping across the blinds. I held my breath until it rolled past. From the couch, Liam's voice came low and steady. "They'll come eventually." "Let them," I said, though my heart was pounding. "They'll find out I'm not as easy to scare as they think." The next day we stayed inside. Liam pored over the documents Grace had slipped me in the bag: hospital discharge, papers, medication labels, and a photocopy of his birth certificate with his biological father's name. It wasn't much, but it was something. In the late afternoon, I heard footsteps on the stairs and froze. Liam looked up from the couch. 3 sharp knocks followed, and this time I knew it wasn't Gregory, it was Ben's familiar rhythm. I cracked the door, forcing a smile. "Hey!" Ben's gaze swept over me, then past my shoulder. "You've got company?" I hesitated, but Liam rose from the couch, extending a hand. "Liam," he said simply. Ben shook it, his eyes narrowing just slightly. He didn't press, but I could tell he was filing away every detail. When he left, Liam said, "You trust him." "With my life," I answered. "But that doesn't mean I can drag him into this. Not yet." That night, as the wind rattled the windows, I realized the walls of my little apartment weren't just keeping us safe, they were closing in. We couldn't stay here forever. The next move had to be ours. By the 3rd day, the apartment felt smaller than ever. Every creak in the hallway, every knock on a neighbor's door had me tense like a live wire. Liam paced from the couch to the kitchen, his bandaged ribs slowing him, but not enough to hide the restless energy rolling off him. "We can't sit here waiting for him to make the next move," he said. "Gregory won't stop until he gets what he wants." "I know," I replied, closing the blinds tighter. "But you're not exactly in shape to go charging into battle." "I don't need to fight him physically," Liam said, leaning against the counter. "I need to prove what he's done. And for that, we need evidence, documents, recordings, anything that ties him to the kidnapping or the hospital payoff." The idea of going after Gregory felt reckless, borderline suicidal, but doing nothing was worse. I could see it in Liam's face. He'd rather risk everything than spend one more day as a target. We spent hours mapping out possibilities. Gregory's office in the Carter Hotel headquarters was locked down tighter than Fort Knox, but Liam remembered his stepfather's habit of keeping sensitive papers at a private townhouse on West Belmont. "He's arrogant," Liam said. "Believes no one would dare touch his personal space." I studied the rough sketch Liam made of the townhouse's layout, his memory filling in details: the spare key hidden in a planter, the study where Gregory liked to drink alone. "Even if we get in, we need a way to get out fast," I said. Liam looked up, his eyes meeting mine. "That's where you come in." It wasn't exactly comforting to know my role in this was getaway driver, but I'd driven in enough snowstorms and backroad shortcuts to trust myself behind the wheel. By evening, we had a plan, risky but clean. We'd wait until Thursday night, when Gregory usually attended a late poker game at the country club. That gave us a narrow 2-hour window. Liam would slip in, grab whatever he could, and we'd be gone before anyone knew he was there. Still, there was one thing nagging at me. What if he's expecting this? What if it's a trap? Liam shrugged. "Then I guess we find out how far he's willing to go." Later that night, I stood at the kitchen sink, staring out into the dark parking lot. The cold glass under my fingertips grounded me. I could feel the baby shift inside me, a gentle reminder of why every choice mattered twice as much now. I turned to Liam. "No matter what happens Thursday, we don't split up, not for a second." He gave a short nod. "Deal." We spent the next day gathering supplies: gloves, a cheap burner phone, and an old duffel bag from my closet. Liam insisted on doing short walks around the block to build up his stamina. Every time we stepped outside, I scanned the street for anything out of place. That afternoon, while he was in the shower, I sat on the couch with my phone in hand, staring at Ben's contact again. My thumb hovered over the call button. Telling him could give us backup, or put him in the crosshairs. If you were me, would you pull a friend into something like this, knowing it could destroy their life? Tell me in the comments, because I've never been more torn. When Liam emerged, toweling his hair, he caught the look on my face. "You're thinking about telling someone," he said. "Yeah," I admitted. He didn't tell me not to, he just said, "Trust your gut." That night, as we reviewed the plan one more time, I realized there was no turning back. Whether we pulled this off or crashed and burned Thursday would change everything. Thursday came faster than I'd expected. All week, my nerves had been strung so tight I could hear my own heartbeat in the quiet moments. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, my stomach was a knot of dread and adrenaline. Liam sat at the kitchen table, wrapping fresh bandages around his ribs. He moved slowly, deliberately, like he knew every second we delayed meant a little more darkness outside, a little more cover. "You sure you're up for this?" I asked, zipping up my black hoodie. "I've been up for this since the day they dragged me off that road," he said, meeting my eyes. We left the apartment just after 8. I drove the truck, taking the long route through side streets to avoid the cameras near Gregory's main properties. The city was quiet in that cold, early winter way, streetlights spilling pale yellow onto empty sidewalks. West Belmont was a different world, rows of brick townhouses with wrought iron fences and manicured hedges. Gregory's place sat in the middle, its windows glowing warm against the night. I parked 2 blocks away, engine idling, while we watched from the shadows. There, Liam said, nodding toward the driveway. A black sedan pulled out, headlights sweeping across the street before disappearing around the corner. That him? I asked. Yeah, country club poker night. He reached for the duffel bag between us. We've got 2 hours. We moved fast but careful. The townhouse loomed ahead, the front steps slick from the frost. Liam ducked behind a planter, pulling out a small brass key hidden beneath the soil. Arrogant, I murmured. Always, he said, sliding it into the lock. The door clicked open without a sound. Inside, the air smelled faintly of cedar and expensive scotch. Thick carpets muffled our footsteps as we moved toward the study. Liam seemed to know exactly where he was going, his memory guiding us down the hall to a door with a frosted glass panel. The room beyond was all dark wood and leather chairs. Against one wall stood a massive desk, its surface clean except for a glass of amber liquid and a crystal ashtray. Liam went straight to the bottom drawer, pulling it open to reveal a small safe. He crouched, spinning the dial with practiced hands. He's predictable, uses birthdays for everything, he muttered. Try yours, I suggested. He did. The safe clicked open. Inside were manila folders, a stack of bound documents, and a flash drive. Liam shoved them into the duffel without a glance. But just as he was closing the safe, the faint sound of tires crunching on gravel reached my ears. Someone's here, I hissed. Liam froze, then killed the desk lamp. We slipped into the hallway, the darkness swallowing us whole. Through the narrow window beside the front door, I saw headlights sweep across the driveway. A different car, sleek silver and unfamiliar. A man stepped out. Not Gregory. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a black coat. He didn't knock. He unlocked the door with his own key. We backed up, pressing ourselves against the wall as the front door swung open. Go, Liam mouthed. We retreated toward the kitchen, the soft creak of floorboards behind us telling me the man had entered the study. Liam eased the back door open, and the cold air rushed in like a slap. We slipped out, closing it silently behind us. In the alley behind the townhouse, we moved fast, the frost crunching under our shoes. My heart was hammering, each beat loud enough to drown out the city. By the time we reached the truck, my hands were trembling on the steering wheel. I didn't speak until we were 3 blocks away. What was that? I asked. No idea, Liam said, his voice tight. But if he's here when Gregory's not, he's important. The duffel bag sat between us, heavy with stolen truths. Whatever was inside could make or break us. We should go through it tonight, I said. Liam nodded. Tonight we find out exactly what we're up against. We didn't speak again until we were back at my apartment, the door bolted and curtains drawn. The truck keys clinked onto the counter, and Liam dropped the duffel bag onto the coffee table like it weighed 100 pounds. For a moment, we just stood there staring at it. The silence was thick enough to feel. You open it, I said. He unzipped the bag, pulling out the manila folders first. The papers inside were dense with legal jargon, but certain phrases jumped out like gunshots. Transfer of controlling interest power of attorney irrevocable. These are forged, Liam muttered, flipping through them. Gregory's been drafting documents that would strip me of everything, signatures that aren't mine, notarized by people I've never met. He set them aside and pulled out a thick-bound ledger. Inside were columns of numbers, dates, and account names. Offshore banks, shell corporations, payouts that didn't make sense. This isn't just about me, he said, his voice low. These are bribes. Payoffs to judges, city council members, even the chief of police. I felt my stomach knot. If this gets out, it could burn down half the people in power in this city. Liam finished for me. Finally, he picked up the small flash drive, turning it over in his fingers. This is where the real danger is, he said. Gregory keeps his dirtiest secrets digital. I fetched my old laptop from the bedroom and set it on the table. Liam plugged in the drive, and a single folder popped up labeled simply Insurance. Inside were video files. The first opened to grainy footage of a man in a tailored suit, Gregory meeting with another man in a hospital office. Their voices were clear. Keep him under until I say otherwise, Gregory said, sliding a thick envelope across the desk. No visitors, no questions. That's the chief of medicine, Liam whispered. The next file showed something worse, security camera footage from a dark street, Liam being shoved into the back of a van by 2 men in masks. The timestamp was 3 days before I'd found him on the road. I swallowed hard. Liam, this is enough to put him away for life. And enough to get us killed if he knows we have it. We sat there in silence, the hum of the heater the only sound. My mind kept circling back to the silver car at the townhouse, the stranger with his own key. Whoever he was part of this, and probably already wondering why Gregory's safe was lighter tonight. Finally, Liam shut the laptop. We need to get this to someone who can use it, someone outside Gregory's reach. Who, I asked. He hesitated. There's a district attorney in the next county. Clean record, no ties to him. But we'd have to go in person. Phones can be tapped, emails intercepted. I leaned back, running a hand through my hair. Then we do it. Tomorrow morning. But even as I said it, I felt the weight of what we were about to do. Tomorrow morning might be too late. Gregory had resources, eyes everywhere. If he suspected what we'd taken, he wouldn't wait to come after it or us. Liam must have read my thoughts. We won't sleep tonight, will we? I shook my head. Not a chance. He gave a tired smile. Then let's make coffee. While the machine hissed in the kitchen, I found myself staring at the folders on the table, the proof of everything Liam had told me. In the right hands, it could end Gregory's empire. In the wrong ones, it could bury us both. And somewhere out there, Gregory's people were already moving. We were on the road before sunrise, the city still wrapped in a thin gray fog. I'd packed the flash drive, the forged documents, and the ledger into a backpack that never left my lap. Liam sat in the passenger seat, scanning every car in the mirrors like he expected one to pull up alongside us and open fire. The route to the district attorney's office in Jasper County should have been a quiet 2-hour drive through farmland and sleepy towns. But after the week we'd had, quiet felt like a foreign word. Half an hour in, we hit the first sign something was wrong, a black SUV in the rearview mirror. Nothing unusual about that, except it had been behind us since we left the city limits, keeping the same distance no matter how I adjusted my speed. You see it too, Liam said, not a question. Yeah, change lanes. I did. The SUV followed. By the time we passed the next exit, my hands were slick on the steering wheel. Liam reached into the glove compartment, pulling out a small tire iron. Not much, but better than nothing. We didn't speak for the next 10 miles. The SUV stayed with us sometimes, closing the gap just enough for me to catch a glimpse of tinted windows. My mind was already working through options, back roads, doubling back anything to shake them. When I spotted the sign for a gas station half a mile ahead, I made the decision. I signaled, eased into the turn lane, and pulled in. The SUV followed but didn't park, just idled at the far end of the lot facing the exit. Inside, the gas station smelled of burnt coffee and old fryer oil. I grabbed 2 bottles of water and a pack of crackers, keeping my eyes on the windows. Liam wandered toward the back, pretending to browse, but I knew he was checking for a rear exit. They're still out there, I said when he rejoined me at the counter. He nodded. We can't lead them to the DA's office. We need to lose them first. I paid the cashier, and we stepped outside. That's when I saw it. The SUV wasn't alone anymore. A second vehicle, a dark blue sedan, had pulled in and parked near the pumps. The driver was leaning against the hood, pretending to smoke, but watching us too closely. 2 of them now, I muttered. Which means, Liam said grimly, Gregory knows exactly what we took. The air felt heavier, the quiet between us loaded. I could feel the baby shift inside me, a small reminder that I had more than my own life to protect. We can't go back to the apartment, I said. And we can't go forward to Jasper until we shake them, Liam added. The SUV's engine revved. The sedan's driver flicked his cigarette to the ground. I tightened my grip on the backpack, so we make them think we're going one way, and take them somewhere they don't want to be. Liam finished. I slid behind the wheel, heart pounding. As I pulled onto the highway, both cars followed. We headed east for 5 miles. Then at the last second, I swerved onto an unmarked farm road. The pavement turned to gravel, the tires crunching under us. The SUV followed. The sedan followed. I glanced at Liam. Hope you trust me. I do. But Claire, where are you taking us? I grinned without humor. Somewhere I used to go when I needed to disappear. And I'll tell you what happened when we got there. But first, answer me this. If you were carrying evidence that could bring down a man like Gregory, and 2 cars were tailing you through the back roads, what would you do? Because in the next 30 minutes, we were going to find out if my idea was brilliant, or the dumbest move of my life. The gravel road narrowed as we drove, flanked on both sides by leafless trees, whose bare branches reached over us like a ribcage. The SUV and sedan kept their distance, but I could feel their presence like heat on the back of my neck. This road doesn't go anywhere, Liam said, eyes flicking between the side mirrors. Exactly, I replied. It dead ends at an old quarry. Used to be my shortcut out of town if you knew where to turn. A sharp bend came up ahead. I took it faster than I should have, the rear tires spitting gravel. The SUV mimicked my move. The sedan lagged just a bit behind. Liam braced himself against the dashboard. You're not seriously thinking. Watch. Half a mile past the bend, the road split in two. The main path continued straight to the quarry's sheer drop-off. The other, barely visible in the shadows, was a narrow dirt track that curved sharply uphill into the woods. I killed the headlights for a beat, swung hard into the track, and hit the gas. Branches scraped the sides of the truck. The incline jolted us up and forward, the tires fighting for traction. Behind us, I heard the SUV roar past the turn, gravel spraying. The sedan slowed, but with no sight of us, it continued after the SUV. Liam twisted in his seat, peering through the rear window. They missed it. Not yet, they haven't, I said. The track was only wide enough for one vehicle, the overgrowth closing in, like it hadn't been driven in years. I kept the speed just high enough to stay ahead of anyone who might catch on, but low enough not to lose control. Finally, the path leveled out and spit us onto a flat stretch overlooking the quarry. The view opened up a wide expanse of pale rock and water shimmering dark at the bottom. I parked behind a stand of scrub trees, engine off. The only sound was our breathing and the distant rumble of the SUV somewhere below, probably realizing the road ended in a cliff. Liam exhaled slowly. That was risky. That's one word for it, I said, checking the mirrors. But we bought ourselves a little time. He pulled the backpack onto his lap, his fingers tapping against the fabric. We still need to get to Jasper before they regroup. If they figure out where that dirt track goes, we're boxed in. I nodded my eyes, scanning the tree line. There's another way out, logging road about a mile east. But it's rough, and if they get there first, we're trapped. We sat there for a few minutes, every second stretching long and taut. My mind kept flashing between the evidence in the bag, the people chasing us, and the small life inside me that hadn't asked for any of this. Finally, I started the engine again. Let's move before they do. We bounced along the logging road, the truck shuddering over rocks and potholes. Twice we had to stop so Liam could move fallen branches out of the way. The air smelled of damp earth and pine, and for a moment it felt almost peaceful until we heard it. Engines, more than one. They found the turn, Liam said sharply. Hold on. The road curved downhill sharply, and I let gravity help us, my hands steady on the wheel despite the jarring bumps. At the base of the hill, the road widened and merged with a county road I knew well. If we could get there first, we could disappear into the next town's morning traffic. We shot out of the woods, tires hitting asphalt, and I didn't slow down until we were a good 5 miles away. Only then did I glance at the mirrors clear. Liam sagged back in his seat, the tension in his shoulders easing just a fraction. You've done this before, he said. Not exactly, I replied, but when life keeps trying to corner you, you learn where the exits are. He gave a short laugh, but his grip on the backpack didn't loosen. Let's not give them another chance to catch up. We still had a long way to Jasper, and if Gregory's people were willing to chase us through the back roads, I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. By the time we rolled into Jasper County, the sun was high, and my shoulders ached from hours of white-knuckling the steering wheel. The courthouse sat like a brick fortress at the center of town, its columns and heavy double doors giving off a weight of permanence I desperately hoped would work in our favor. Liam kept the backpack tight against his chest as we climbed the courthouse steps. Remember, he murmured, this DA doesn't know us. We've got one shot to make him listen before Gregory finds a way to shut it down. Inside, the air was cooler, smelling faintly of paper and floor polish. A receptionist behind thick glass asked our business. When we told her, her eyes widened slightly and she picked up the phone without another word. Moments later, a tall man in a dark suit appeared, his salt and pepper hair neatly combed, his expression unreadable. I'm District Attorney Warren Hale, he said, gesturing us toward his office. The office was tidy, but functional law books lining one wall, a desk stacked with case files. Hale took a seat behind it, motioning for us to sit opposite. You said you have evidence regarding Gregory Carter. Liam set the backpack on the desk and unzipped it. Not just evidence proof. Documents, bank records, video files. Enough to bury him. Hale's eyes flicked to me, then back to the contents spilling onto his desk. You understand the weight of what you're claiming. Carter's influence doesn't stop at county lines. I understand, Liam said. That's why we came to you. We couldn't risk going to anyone in the city. Hale put on a pair of reading glasses and began leafing through the manila folders. His brow furrowed as he skimmed the forged transfer papers. Then he opened the ledger, pausing at the offshore account entries. This could implicate more than Carter, he murmured. If these numbers are accurate, you're looking at 6 public officials, maybe more. Then you see why we need your help, I said. He leaned back, steepling his fingers. If I take this on, I'll need to move fast. Carter's people will already know you're here, or at least suspect it. Do you have somewhere safe to stay? I glanced at Liam. Not exactly. Before Hale could respond, there was a knock at the office door. The receptionist poked her head in, her expression tight. Sir, there's a man here asking for you. Says it's urgent. He's from Denver. My stomach dropped. Tell him I'm busy, Hale said without looking up. He says it's about a theft, she added, her eyes flicking toward us. Hale's gaze sharpened. What's his name? Didn't give one, but he's insistent. Liam and I exchanged a glance that said everything. Gregory had moved faster than we thought. Hale stood closing the folders and sliding them into his desk drawer. Stay here. Don't open this door for anyone but me. He stepped out, leaving us in a silence so thick it was hard to breathe. I leaned toward Liam. If that's one of Gregory's men, then Hale's about to have the fight of his career, Liam finished grimly. Minutes passed. Raised voices filtered through the heavy door, but we couldn't make out words. Then suddenly the building's fire alarm shrieked to life, its piercing wail rattling my teeth. What the hell, I started, but Liam was already on his feet grabbing the backpack. We're not waiting to find out if that's a coincidence. We slipped into the hallway, joining the flow of people heading toward the stairwell. Red lights flashed overhead, and the sharp scent of smoke hit my nose, but whether it was real or staged, I couldn't tell. At the landing, I glanced down into the crowd below and froze. Half a flight beneath us, moving against the tide of evacuees, was the man from the silver car outside Gregory's townhouse. His eyes locked on mine, and in that instant, I knew the fire alarm had nothing to do with safety. And here's the thing, if you've ever felt the exact moment your luck runs out, you'll know what was about to happen next. Because as the crowd carried us toward the exit, he started climbing toward us, and there was no mistaking his intent. The stairwell felt like it was closing in on us. Bodies pressed from every side, the metallic wail of the fire alarm bouncing off concrete walls. But even through the chaos, I could see him, the man from the silver car, pushing against the current of evacuees, his gaze locked on me like I was the only person in the building. Don't look back again, Liam murmured, his voice low but urgent. Just move. We let the crowd carry us down another flight. My mind was racing. If he caught us in here, there'd be nowhere to run. No exits except the ground floor, no backup. Just a stranger who clearly wasn't here for a friendly chat. At the second-floor landing, Liam tugged my arm toward a maintenance door. This way, he said. It was unmarked, but when he shoved it open, the smell of dust and old paint hit us. A narrow service hallway stretched ahead, lit only by a single flickering bulb. We slipped inside, letting the door swing shut behind us, the alarm muffled to a dull hum. This goes to the loading dock, Liam said, already moving. I kept pace, clutching the backpack to my chest. My pulse was so loud I almost didn't hear it. The faint echo of footsteps behind us. Slow, deliberate. He's in here, I whispered. Liam didn't answer, just quickened his stride. We turned a corner, passing stacks of cardboard boxes and pallets covered in shrink wrap. The air was cooler now, carrying a hint of exhaust fumes close to the outside. Then a shadow detached itself from the wall ahead. The man stepped into the narrow corridor blocking our way. Going somewhere, his voice was smooth, but his eyes were ice. Liam positioned himself slightly in front of me. We don't want trouble. You've already got it, the man said, taking a step closer. That bag belongs to Mr. Carter. My grip tightened on the straps. It doesn't belong to him if he stole what's inside. A flicker of annoyance crossed his face, like my talking had ruined some script he'd prepared. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Hand it over, and maybe I forget I saw you. Liam's stance didn't change. Not happening. The man sighed like we were children, refusing to hand back a toy. Then his hand dipped into his coat. I didn't wait to see what came out. Run, I shouted. Liam shoved the nearest pallet into him, sending a cascade of boxes toppling. We bolted past, sprinting toward the light at the end of the corridor. The loading dock doors were already open, smoke from the alarm drifting out into the parking lot. We hit the asphalt hard, my lungs burning. The truck was parked 2 blocks away, and every instinct screamed to get to it, but shouts echoed behind us, and I knew he wasn't far. We ducked into an alley, weaving between dumpsters and back staircases, until we spilled out onto a side street. My breath came in sharp, ragged pulls, and Liam's face was pale beneath the strain. We can't go back to Hale now, I said. If Carter's man was inside, the DA's office is compromised. Liam nodded grimly, which means our list of safe places just got shorter. We made it to the truck, adrenaline carrying us the last few blocks. As soon as we were inside, I locked the doors and started the engine. My hands shook against the steering wheel. We need a new plan, Liam said. Yeah, I replied, pulling out of the space, and we need it fast. Because here's the thing, we hadn't even seen the worst of what Gregory was capable of yet. And when it came, it would make this little chase through the courthouse look like a warm-up. We drove in silence for a long time, the courthouse fading into the distance behind us. My hands were still locked tight on the steering wheel, and every so often I caught Liam glancing at the side mirrors. Neither of us said it, but we both knew Gregory's man would keep coming until he had what was in the backpack. By the time we hit the outskirts of town, the winter light was already starting to thin, and the sky carried that heavy gray that warned of snow. I took an unmarked turn off the highway, a road that wound between bare cornfields and clusters of pines. "Where are we going?" Liam finally asked. "There's an old cabin my uncle used to rent out to hunters," I said. "Hasn't been used in years, but it's off-grid. No one will find us there unless they're already on our tail." He didn't argue. I think he knew we needed a place to breathe, even if only for a few hours. The cabin sat at the end of a long gravel drive, its wood siding weathered to silver, the porch sagging slightly under the weight of age. I parked under the trees far enough that the truck wouldn't be visible from the road. Inside, the air was cold and smelled faintly of cedar and dust. I found a couple of old blankets while Liam got the small wood stove going. The backpack never left his side. Once the fire was crackling, we spread the evidence out on the floor again. Liam held up the flash drive. "We should make copies. If Carter gets to this, we're done." "There's no internet here," I reminded him, "and the nearest town's 20 miles away." He frowned. "Then we hide it somewhere even I wouldn't think to look." We argued over that for a while, whether it was safer to stash it in the cabin or keep it with us. In the end, we compromised. I slipped the flash drive into a small tin and buried it in the woodpile outside, marking the spot with a broken branch. When I came back in, Liam was sitting by the fire staring into the flames like he was replaying the last few days in his head. "You know," he said quietly, "if we'd just run when you found me, we might be halfway to another state by now." "Yeah," I said, dropping onto the floor beside him. "But you'd still be looking over your shoulder, and Gregory would still be running this city." A long pause, then a faint smile. Guess I picked the right person to stop for that night. We didn't talk much after that. The quiet felt fragile, like a thin sheet of ice over deep water. I could feel exhaustion tugging at me, but every creak of the cabin kept my eyes open. Sometime after midnight, I heard a soft crunch outside, like footsteps on frozen ground. I sat up, heart hammering, and saw Liam already reaching for the tire iron he'd kept beside him. We moved to the window, peering out into the dark. The trees swayed in the wind, but the sound came again, closer this time. Then silence. We waited, nothing. Finally, Liam whispered, "Might have been an animal." But I wasn't convinced. And when I saw it just for a second, a faint glint of metal in the tree line, my stomach dropped. I turned to Liam. "They found us." And here's the part you need to know. What happened next wasn't just another chase. It was the moment everything we thought we understood about Gregory Carter's game flipped upside down. The glint of metal vanished as quickly as it appeared, swallowed by the shifting shadows of the pines. My pulse thundered in my ears. "We have to move," I whispered. Liam shook his head. "If we run into the woods, we'll be blind. Whoever's out there knows this land better than we do." I scanned the small room, the wood stove, the dusty shelves, the door we'd locked, but which was little more than a thin slab of pine. Then we make it look like we're not here. We doused the fire, plunging the cabin into darkness. Smoke curled upward into the chimney, but without the glow of flames, we became just another shadow among the trees. We crouched behind the table, the backpack wedged between us. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Then came the sound again, this time on the porch. The boards groaned under the weight of someone who knew exactly where to step to avoid making too much noise. The door rattled once, twice, a faint scrape of metal in the lock. Liam tightened his grip on the tire iron. I reached for the old hunting rifle mounted above the mantel, empty, but our visitor didn't need to know that. The door eased open just an inch. A beam of light from a small flashlight cut through the dark, sweeping across the room. I held my breath as it slid over the table, the stove, and then stopped on us. "Found you," a voice said. It wasn't the silver car man. It was deeper, rougher, almost amused. The flashlight clicked off, plunging us into black. The next sound was a low whistle, and then 2 more sets of footsteps joined the first. "Gregory sends his regards," the voice said. Before I could respond, something heavy hit the back wall glass, shattering cold air flooding in. They weren't just here to scare us. They were here to end this. Liam shoved the backpack into my arms. Out the back. We scrambled toward the small kitchen door. One of the intruders lunged, but Liam swung the tire iron, catching him in the shoulder. I yanked the door open and we bolted into the freezing night. The moonlight was weak, but it was enough to guide us toward the woodpile. I didn't think just grab the tin with the flash drive, shoving it into my jacket. If they caught us, they'd have to take it from me. Gunshots cracked behind us, sharp and loud in the still air. Bark splintered from a tree inches from my head. We ducked low, sprinting for the tree line. The forest swallowed us, branches whipping against our faces, the frozen ground crunching underfoot. I could hear them following, their voices carrying through the cold. Don't let them get to the road. We ran until my lungs felt like fire, finally stumbling into a narrow clearing. The dark shape of the truck sat ahead, exactly where I'd left it. Liam yanked the door open, shoving me inside before jumping in himself. The engine roared to life, tires spinning in the frost before catching traction. Headlights swung wildly across the trees as we tore back toward the main road. Only when the cabin was a distant shadow in the rear view did Liam speak. They knew exactly where we were, Claire. That wasn't luck. I gripped the flash drive in my pocket. Then someone told them. And it wasn't just to scare us off, they were ready to kill. Liam glanced at me, his expression grim. Which means the leak isn't at the courthouse. It's somewhere closer, someone we thought we could trust. And just like that, I realized the truth, the twist that made my stomach turn. We weren't just fighting Gregory Carter. We were fighting someone inside Liam's own circle. What came next would force us to choose between exposing that traitor or surviving long enough to make it matter. We drove through the night, headlights carving tunnels of pale light through the blackness. The highway was empty except for the occasional 18-wheeler, their rumble fading as we passed. Neither of us spoke for the first hour. The betrayal sat between us, heavier than the backpack on the floor. Finally, Liam broke the silence. There's only one person it could be. I glanced at him. You're sure? His jaw tightened. My father's lawyer, Paul Finch. He's been with the family for 20 years. I told him we were going to Hale because I thought he'd know how to protect us. But if Carter knew exactly where we were, that's the leak. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. So we take this to someone else, someone Finch can't reach. That's the problem, Liam said. There's no one left I trust completely, and the longer we hold on to this, the more dangerous it gets for both of us. We pulled into a deserted rest stop just before dawn. The air was freezing mist curling from our breaths. Liam paced while I leaned against the truck, thinking. We can't keep running forever, I said. If Carter's people catch us, this all dies with us. We need a way to make it impossible for him to bury this. Liam stopped pacing. A public release. The idea hung there between us, electric. We upload everything, I said slowly. The documents, the videos, the ledger make it, so even if we disappear, the story won't. He nodded. But we can't do it from anywhere traceable. We'd need an open network, crowded place, no security cameras close enough to catch our faces. It was risky, but it was the only move that made sense. We mapped a route to a mid-sized city 2 hours south, big enough to vanish and small enough that Carter's people wouldn't be stationed on every corner. By the time we rolled into town, the streets were waking up. We parked in the shadow of a crumbling brick warehouse and walked to a coffee shop with a handwritten free Wi-Fi sign taped to the door. Inside, the air smelled of espresso and warm bread. We ordered 2 drinks we barely touched and slipped into the back corner. I opened my laptop, the flash drive already in my hand. Once this starts, Liam said, there's no going back. I met his eyes, that's the point. The files uploaded slowly, each percentage tick a hammer beat in my chest. Halfway through, the shop door swung open and in walked Paul Finch. My stomach plunged. He spotted us instantly, his expression unreadable. You've made a mess, Liam, he said, his voice calm, almost bored. Liam stood, placing himself between me and Finch. You sold me out. Finch shrugged. Business is business. Carter pays better than you ever will. The upload hit 90%. Finch's gaze flicked to the laptop. Shut it down. I shook my head. Too late. He took a step closer, but Liam moved with him, blocking the way. They stood there, inches apart, neither willing to back down. Claire, Liam said, without looking at me. Finish it. I hit enter. The progress bar flashed, complete the files, scattering to servers across the internet. Carter's empire had just been exposed to anyone with a connection. Finch's expression soured. You don't know what you've done. Yes, Liam said, I do. We left him standing there, the coffee shop buzzing with the smell of bread and the quiet hum of conversations that had nothing to do with us. Outside, the morning light felt sharper, the air cleaner. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe without waiting for the next shadow to move against me. But even as we walked back to the truck, I knew this wasn't the end. Carter would come back from this if he could, and we'd have to be ready when he did. And if you want to know how far Gregory Carter was willing to go to rebuild his power, you'll want to hear the next chapter. Because trust me, what came next made every chase, every close call look like a warm-up. The next morning, we were already miles from that coffee shop, the horizon stretching out like a promise neither of us dared to speak aloud. The flash drive was gone, not because we'd lost it, but because it no longer mattered. Every file, every damning number and face had been scattered across the internet like seeds in the wind. Gregory Carter's name was in headlines before we even reached the state line. For the first time in weeks, the air didn't feel heavy. There was no SUV in the rear view, no shadow slipping between the trees. Just the hum of the road and the soft golden light of a new day. We stopped at a small diner off the highway, the kind with peeling linoleum floors and coffee that tasted faintly of metal. The waitress called everyone Han and nobody looked twice at us. Liam sat across from me, his hands wrapped around a mug, his eyes clearer than I'd ever seen them. "We might never get credit for this," he said quietly. "Someone else will take the headlines, the case, maybe even the praise." "Good," I said, "it means we get to live." And that, I realized, was the choice we'd made. We hadn't fought to be heroes. We'd fought to be free. Free from the kind of power that thinks it can decide who gets to exist in peace and who doesn't. Free from the lie that safety means silence. As we paid and walked back to the truck, the wind carried the faint smell of rain. The world felt wider than it had in a long time. There would be other fights, other nights where we'd have to choose between running and standing our ground. But for now, the road ahead was open. And maybe that's the thing people don't tell you: freedom isn't a finish line. It's every mile you keep moving forward no matter who's chasing you.